Even in a series as beloved as Metal Gear, there are games that didn't quite resonate with fans during their initial release. Then there are games that fans just flat out hate. Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 of the most hated Metal Gear games in the series. Before we do that, as always, I want to say a quick thank you to you all who have been showing support, whether it's through liking, commenting, or subscribing. It really means a lot. The channel is growing very rapidly thanks to all of you. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. I make at least one Metal Gear related video a week with a couple of shorts to go along with that video. Now, let's get started with our list. Metal Gear Acid was the first Metal Gear game in the franchise released for the PSP. It is also one of, if not the worst selling Metal Gear game of all time. Fans of the series had an expectation of what a handheld Metal Gear should be, and unfortunately, Acid did away with the Metal Gear Solid stealth action formula in favor of turn-based card deck gameplay. While deck building games and tactical turn-based gameplay are extremely popular now, the fact that this style of game is so far removed from the series norm pretty much doomed Acid from the start. Not to mention the graphics and presentation were a huge step down from Metal Gear Solid 2, a game that released 2 years prior to Acid. Putting gameplay and presentation aside, Metal Gear Acid's story is pretty nonsensical even by Metal Gear standards. The player takes on the role of Solid Snake as he is tasked with infiltrating the Lobito Physics and Chemistry Laboratory compound. There's nothing too crazy about that, right? Well, as you progress through the game, the colorful and unique cast of characters are unveiled to you, and eventually, Snake is mind-controlled and made to believe he is someone else by a clown who is also able to replicate other people's appearances. See what I mean? Still, Acid has its redeeming qualities. The music is pretty great, and for a PSP game, the graphics aren't too shabby. If you enjoy slower and more methodical paced turn-based gameplay or deck-building games, Acid might actually be your jam. Its sequel, Metal Gear Acid 2, does everything the first game does in a much better way and with a much more stylized and unique presentation. Hopefully we get both Acid and Acid 2 in one of the Master Collection volumes, so more people can give them a try and they are able to have their redemption arc. As a franchise grows and adds entries that alter its lore, canonicity becomes one of the most important aspects of that franchise to its fans. Unfortunately, Portable Ops became a victim to not only its fans dismissing it as a silly spin-off story, but also the series' creator. Hideo Kojima has stated that while the overall story is part of the saga, there are quite a few deviations from the main Metal Gear Solid storyline. There is also a dig at Portable Ops right at the very beginning of Peace Walker, a mainline game that Kojima wrote and directed, pretty much insinuating that Peace Walker is the premier Metal Gear Solid handheld game for the PSP. This has sparked debates and passionate arguments from fans of the series for years. As a result, you will see a lot more Portable Ops hate nowadays, with some fans sadly choosing to not even bother with it. Portable Ops is also omitted from official series timelines quite often, further casting it aside. Like Metal Gear Acid, Portable Ops released on the PSP, and due to that, its scale was much smaller than a mainline console Metal Gear release. Despite that, the game tries its very best to be a bite-sized Metal Gear Solid 3, and I say tries because the controls are one of the biggest issues with the game. On top of that, the game introduces the soldier recruitment mechanic in its earliest and most annoying form, which requires the player to drag a potential recruit all the way back to the beginning of the stage and load them onto a truck before continuing the main mission. Still, fans were much more receptive to the original stealth action formula returning after Acid's departure. However, that still wasn't enough to win the hearts of most Metal Gear fans. The game reintroduced some pretty important characters in their younger years, and let's just say a lot of fans absolutely hate how some of the most beloved characters in the series were handled. Portable Ops did a lot wrong in the eyes of fans, however, it is nowhere near the most hated game in the series. It definitely deserves its spot in a future Master Collection release, and hopefully fans can be a bit more open-minded despite what Kojima has stated about the game. Whenever the remake for an iconic game is in the works, there is so much that has to go right for it to be a success and match up to the original. Unfortunately, not much went right in the eyes of fans when it comes to the Twin Snakes. From the decision to re-record Metal Gear Solid 1's legendary voice acting, to making the game a Nintendo exclusive, to the use of Metal Gear Solid 2's engine breaking the game in a plethora of ways, Twin Snakes did pretty much everything the fans did not want it to do. Keep in mind this is yet another game Kojima didn't have too much involvement with. Instead, since he was busy with the development of Metal Gear Solid 3, he handed the immense task of remaking Metal Gear Solid 1 to Silicon Knights and Ryuhei Kitamura, who was responsible for directing many of the game's cinematics. And oh boy, those cinematics are one of the main reasons this game is so hated amongst fans. Initially, Kitamura remade Metal Gear Solid 1's cutscenes exactly as they were in the original. However, after showing his progress to Kojima, Hideo asked him to please remake the cutscenes in his iconic style, which at the time was very heavily inspired by The Matrix. The music was also changed for better or worse, and if you ask most people, the music was a downgrade to them personally. However, the most often stated gripe with the Twin Snakes is the use of Metal Gear Solid 2's engine and how it trivializes many aspects of the game. Things like being able to look in first-person view and also fire weapons in first-person view make a game created without that viewpoint in mind even easier than it already was. With how many good remakes have come out in recent years, the Twin Snakes serves as an example of how not to remake a classic video game title. Suffice to say, the original Metal Gear Solid is still the best way to experience the very first MGS game. I'm sure a lot of you are very surprised to see the Phantom Pain included in this list. Unfortunately, it is undoubtedly one of the most hated games in the series for a variety of reasons. Up until this point, all of the games included in this list were not directly handled by Kojima himself. The Phantom Pain being his creation and still disappointing quite a few Metal Gear fans definitely amplifies the hate this game gets. Combine that with the whole Konami vs. Kojima scandal, conspiracy theories about the game being unfinished, and the disappointment fans felt when the story they had hyped up in their minds prior to the game's release didn't end up being the one we got, and you have the perfect lightning rod for hate. Even with all that drama out of the way, we still haven't even touched on the complaints about the actual game. Fans didn't love the open world and how barren and lifeless it felt, and up until this point, Metal Gear was always a linear game. Ground Zeroes was actually much better received by longtime fans of the series due to it taking place on one self-contained map, making it much more akin to past Metal Gear games. Speaking of things fans like from previous Metal Gear entries, the story and cutscenes in Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain are completely dialed back compared to pretty much any other Metal Gear game. The Phantom Pain is essentially the complete antithesis of Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. This, on top of the fact that the extremely well-known English voice actor for Snake, David Hayter, was replaced by Kiefer Sutherland, all but sent fans into an outrage. We could go on and on about all the things that make Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain an easy game to hate. In fact, I don't think I've ever spoken to a fellow fan that doesn't either completely love The Phantom Pain or despises it and thinks it's an incomplete, empty, and broken mistake of a game. Whichever side you fall on, it's undeniable that The Phantom Pain is a game surrounded by a lot of controversy and as a result, a lot of hate. Unlike The Phantom Pain, I know for a fact that you all knew this game was going to be number one on this list. As early as when the very first trailer for Survive dropped, it instantly became the most hated Metal Gear game of all time. So much so that I don't even know where to begin. We could talk about the fact that the Kojima vs. Konami scandal was still going strong at this point, or the fact that this was the very first entry into the Metal Gear series since Kojima left Konami, or how about the fact that the game revolved around zombies and traded in the stealth action for tower defense gameplay. Keep in mind this all happened after everything I just stated about the Phantom Pain went down, meaning feelings of disappointment over that game were still very raw, which in turn means Survive brought everything back up to the surface. Traditional video game media and content creators ripped into this game without any remorse, amplifying the hate and anger toward Konami into a spiral that they are just now starting to crawl out of. The amount of disgust and distrust toward Konami and its treatment of Metal Gear seemed like it would be everlasting, and it all stemmed from Survive. While Metal Gear Survive is nowhere near my favorite Metal Gear game, I do think it was judged too harshly much too soon. Some of the most well-known reviews of Survive review the game based off of the first few hours and boil the gameplay down to repetitive stabbing of zombies through a fence, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's an okay game with an okay story and okay gameplay. Nothing more and nothing less. To be honest with you, the best part of Survive is the ability to play online co-op based multiplayer with friends, something that future Metal Gear games could benefit from including. All in all, whether you agree with the Mount Snakemore levels of hate this game gets, there is no denying it is by far the most hated game in the series, and unless Konami majorly messes up with Metal Gear Solid Delta or any future entries into the series, I don't ever see that changing. I hope you all enjoyed going through this quick list of the most hated Metal Gear games with me. As always, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you guys in the next one.